Hello everyone, Colin Canet here for Woodwork Web. Today we've got a really interesting little project to do. We've been asked to make a coffee grinder, and what this is going to consist of, these are kits that you can purchase at various different places, and it's the mechanism that actually does the grinding. What we're going to be doing today is making a little box that fits underneath the coffee grinder, and when you grind, of course, the ground beans go into the box. Now the box will be attached to this, so what we have to do is to make a little drawer that's going to pull out that will contain the ground coffee beans. Now these kits come with extensive plans, and we're going to be following them and making a box just like this, a box joint box that will fit the coffee grinder, and we'll show you as we go along all the different steps. Now this particular plan calls for the four sides of the box to be 4 7/8 by 4 inches. And the 4-inch side is the part that we're going to cut the dovetails in. Now because this is a very small box, we were very particular that all of these components are very accurately cut. So we've double checked them and they're all very accurate. So we're going to go over to the table saw now, and we're going to start cutting the box joints for this box. So here we are at the table saw, and of course this is our box joint jig that we're going to be using to cut all the sides for the coffee grinder box. Now we've actually cut a few different generations of these boxes because we wanted to try some things out. And what we discovered is that in order to make really good precision boxes, particularly with small boxes like this, you'll need to do a couple of things. You'll need to go to a plastic store or someplace and either purchase some plastic like this, some thick stock, which I've done, or you may be able to find some thin stock that works exactly how you need. And I'll show you an up close in a second. You'll need to make a couple of pieces. This is it's a 3/4 inch wide, but it's only a 1/4 inch thick. Now we're going to be making 1/4 inch box joint fingers. So this is what they're going to be, all 1/4 inch, both the pins and where the pins fit into are going to be all 1/4 inch. And in order to do that, so you get a good precision cut, because we're cutting all 4 sides at the same time, you need to be able to lock them together after you've made the first cut. Now let me show you a close-up of this. Now here's the 2 little pieces that I was telling you about. This one is, well, this one's about 10 or 12 inches long. What's critical is that it's exactly a 1/4 inch thick, and in this case it's about 3/4 inch wide. This little piece here is also a 1/4 inch thick, and I don't know, it's about 3/8 inch wide, and I don't know, 2 inches long. That doesn't matter. What does matter is that it's a 1/4 inch thick, and here's where you use it. When you put your first boards, your 4 boards, into your box joint jig, you're going to want to offset. You need to offset 2 of them to account for that 1/4 inch pin, those 1/4 inch pins on one side. And in order to do that accurately, you need some kind of a gauge to do that, and that's exactly what this does. Now where this little piece comes into play is here. And let's go back to an earlier cut. This is one of our test cuts that we made. I would actually do this like that. This is a test cut that we made. So your first cut is going to be this down here, and it's offset by the 1/4 inch that we already talked about. Now when you turn it upside down, it still needs to maintain the same offset, but what becomes critical now is that all of these pins need to line up on the front and the back. And we found that the only way with a small unit like this, the only way to do this was to use an alignment pin, and that's what this is for, this little plastic. It's an alignment pin, and when you put that in there, it keeps all of these absolutely straight, so that when you start cutting these, they're all going to line up. See that? See how they all line up? Well, if we had them absolutely right, they will actually line up once you get in your jig. Otherwise, what happens is when you cut this second row, they're off by a little bit and the whole box doesn't go together properly. So we're going to go ahead now and we're going to line up our first cut, and we're going to put our gauge in to get the proper offset. Okay, here we are at the box joint jig, and you can see there's our 4 pieces. And the back 2 are going to butt right up against the side. The front 2, we're going to offset them by the 1/4 inch that we need. And I need to put a little bit of a spacer in here to put these, to be able to tighten these up. There we are. Now that's nice and snug. That's tightened down. Got the spacer out. Now we're going to be cutting the bottom end of these box joints. Now when we take this out, we want to make sure that we don't move it too much. And you can see, there we go. And now I'm going to install that key. And it doesn't matter how long it is, as long as it reaches all, and you can see that that little key there has reached all 4, even if it is sliding a little bit there, has reached all 4 of those pins. Now I put it back in the box joint, and you can see that it's actually lined up, and because it's butted up against this side here, it's nice and firm in there. All I need to do is put my little spacer bar back in there, and we are ready to go ahead now and actually cut those bottom pins. I always find these take a little bit of fiddling around to get right. There's one side, and there's the other side, nice tight fit. There it is. Pretty nice joints too. That jig does a pretty nice job of those finger joints. Okay, the next thing we want to do now is the base. Now I've already cut the base to size and thickness, so it's all ready to use. With this scrap piece of wood that I had, I actually, after I installed an OG bit in the router, I actually did some test cuts, because these OG bits, depending on where you move them up and down, they give you a different look, and I moved it up and down to see where I liked it. So I've actually got that all set now, so all I have to do is run this through and we'll have the base made. The next thing it calls for on these instructions is for the little drawer parts to be made that will go inside the box. And it's asking for 1/4-inch plywood, but I've already cut some of this scrap maple that I had down to 1/4 of an inch, so I think I'm going to make the drawer out of maple. So I'm just going to go ahead now and cut those components. Well, here we are back again, and let's have a look at how our glue is doing. That's good. That's perfect. Nice and solid. There you go. There's the little box. And there's the base. Okay. Those are good. Now the next thing we need to do, because this little box is going to want to slide inside here, is we're going to have to measure and cut a little hole for this. But we have to also compensate. There's the base. There's an inside step to go in there, an inside base. And got it the wrong way, there it goes there. And so this little drawer is going to have to sit inside because it's going to slide on top of that. So we're going to need to cut a hole in there, and I think we'll go to the table saw to do that. Now, as you can see from the side, I've raised the blade to the top, and when I do that you can see how it cuts on each side, and I'm going to need to go that deep in order to cut, but you can see how this blade is actually going to be nicking the back of this box here. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to change blades. I'm going to put a little bit smaller blade in here and see if that'll work. Now what I've done, I've actually put in a 7 1/4 inch blade. Now there's a 10-inch blade. This is a 10-inch saw, and what I've installed is basically a circular saw blade because they both have a 5/8 arbor. So I've put this 7 1/4 inch blade in here, and you can see that when the blade tops up here, there's lots of room. It cuts to the top, but it still leaves lots of room. So when I go through this way, it'll only cut, I only need to cut that far before it actually cuts to the top of the blade. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up the fence, I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to move the fence along and make a series of cuts along here. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want this wood, you can see how the grain is running like this, I don't want this wood to splinter in here and come out. So I'm going to make a whole bunch of series of cuts along here so that I can actually just break this out, and then I'll clean that up with a chisel at the end. There's our box getting almost completed. There's the inside. Let's do another little dry fit to make sure everything sits nice. So there's the inside bottom, and the little drawer will fit in there just like that. And then there's going to be the front of the drawer that will fit on top of that, and that'll actually cover up that hole. So here's a drawing of the front of our box. So here is the front of our box, and you can see the hole where the drawer fits in. So here's the box, here's the two sides, of course the back is there, and this is like a cutaway. So this red is actually our drawer. But here's what we need to make next, is the coffee is going to be ground up here, and we don't want the coffee to be falling down in here. So what we need to do is make some slides that will look like this. And we need to do that on both sides. And we'll need to we'll have to custom fit it at the back. And the point of this, of course, is that when the coffee's all ground, it'll actually fall into this little tray at the bottom, this little drawer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, this requires 3/4 inch stock. So from here to here is 3/4 of an inch. So basically I'm just going to make a big rabbet and make sure that it fits. And then I think I'll probably just do that, just hand plane that is probably all that's going to need, because there isn't very much of it. So let's go ahead and we'll make these slide parts. Now I found this very nice piece of edge grain fir, and it's just long enough. It's a little bit too long, but that's fine. It's perfect. I found this in my scrap pile. That's why we keep scraps. And I've actually marked on the end, you can see on the end, the black areas are the parts I'm going to cut off. Now the black area, the square part at the bottom, I'm actually going to be able to cut that off on the table saw. So I'm actually going to make the long cut first of all, and then I'll make the short cut, and that black part will just fall away. Then I'll take what's left and we'll take it over to the vise, and we'll use a plane and we'll just plane that down. Okay, I just spent a little bit of time over at the sliding miter, and I've cut all of these little, you can see these little angles, and I've just cut all of those to see if they fit. I've got 45 degree, you can see there's two 45-degree angles at the back, and they fit in there pretty good. Let's see if that drawer fits in there. That's good, that fits in there, and there's enough movement that it's not going to lock in. Okay, all we need to do now is to glue these sides up and glue this bottom, this 3mm 1/8 inch plywood in there, and attach the door, and we're ready to start doing some finishing. So the next thing we're going to do is finish it. I've tested it, and the top fits on there perfectly. The last thing we'll have to do is drill a couple of holes to put the screws in there. And I've also wondered about coloring the knob. I thought the knob would look nice if it was black as well, to offset the color of the top here, this cast iron top. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to color the knob black, and then we'll go ahead and start finishing. And for the finishing, I'm going to be using Osmo, and we'll show you how to apply that in just a moment. So there's our close-up, and where's the side? There's the side we've just done. See how that just sort of pops those pins out? Now this is all that I'm using. You can see there's very little in there. It's just a tiny bit. And you just sort of dab it and run it in circular motions, and run it so that you run it against the grain. And this is figured broadleaf maple, so you really want to be selective of the kind of finish that you put on some of these woods, because you really, in this case, you really want this grain to pop out there. And there's the base, and you can see how the base is coming. So the Osmo you apply in a circular motion like this, and at the very end you wipe it with the grain. And this is going to want to sit overnight, and I will apply the second and even the third coat in the following couple of days. You can see how it makes those pins just pop out like that. We'll do it again on this side here. Just watch. Amazing how that just pops the grain, pops the color. The next thing we want to do is to put a couple of screws in here, and they recommend that you drill a couple of pilot holes, and I've already got that drill set in place there. So we'll drill there, and another one on that side, and we'll put these little screws in, and that will hold our coffee maker onto the base. And that's it. There's a little drawer, and you can see the little black knob there, how that dresses up that little coffee maker. But we're going to do more than that today. We're actually going to try it out because I want to see what kind of coffee this actually grinds. So we've brought a little bit of coffee into the workshop today, and we've even brought our coffee maker in. So we're going to grind this up. What I want to make sure when we're grinding here is that all of the grounds, or all of the beans that we're grinding, or at least most of them, actually fall into the little drawer. We don't want any grounds falling into the side because we made those sloping sides so that that wouldn't happen. So let's just check and see how much we have for grounds here and where they fell. And it ground up pretty nicely. Gee, there's a tiny bit of dust in there, but really nothing. Let's check out this coffee and see how it is. Well, it looks like our coffee's done now, so let's have a sip from the special workshop ground coffee. That's very good. This little grinder actually grinds a little bit coarse, so if you're using this style of coffee maker, you might want to grind, or you might want to add a little bit more coffee to it, depending on the style of coffee that you like. All in all, these are really nice little projects to make, and they're really more decorative than they are functional. You can grind coffee with them, but they're really more of an enhancement for a kitchen or a dining room. And that's our little project. This was a fun little project to do. I'm Colin Kennett for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.